Well, to talk about this a little more on this very important day here in France, where so many commemoration ceremonies are being held, I'm joined on the line now by French sociologist Sarah Gensburger. She is an academic who specialises in the subject of collective memory, working at the CNRS Research Centre here in Paris. She's also written extensively about the attacks on November the 13th. You can see one of her books there. Sarah Gensburger, first of all, perhaps I want to thank you first for coming on to the programme to talk to us. I'm sure our viewers will be really interested to hear your specialised thoughts. Perhaps I could begin by asking you, what do you think about these services today? How valuable, how important are these memorial services?
Oh, they are very important, and they will be, I think, a turning point in the national policy of commemoration of November 13 in France. So in some ways, they are the same as the other years, like they have all the same rituals. But at the end, as you will address, I think, in a minute, they will inaugurate the new memorial garden behind the Paris City Hall, which is a result of a 10 years process of discussion and cooperation between the victims' associations, the victim organizations, and the City Hall. And this memorial garden will really become the official place for the next commemoration in the future, where you have all the names of the victims of all the places, because as you just reminded people, for now, all the commemoration happens in each of the location. And now you will have like a place for every victim, including Manuel Diaz from the Stade de France. And in addition to that, you have also this garden, which symbolizes life. And I think it's what you see also Place de la République, where I've been for the last past days. People are here to celebrate the victims, but also to celebrate the very idea of life and working together, being together, the togetherness of the French society.
You mentioned there this garden that is going to be inaugurated later today, and how it involved a lot of discussions between various different groups. Now, without getting into too much detail about the geography of Paris and different associations, which would mean a lot to our international viewers, perhaps you could tell us some of the areas of concern. Why was there so much discussion? What were the worries? What were people keen to?
Of course. Yeah, I can do it very simply, in a very simple way. The main discussion was what this garden had to celebrate. So the two organizations are quite different. One is gathering more people who lost someone, a dear person, like the parents of young people who died. And the other organizations, they gather more people who survived. So one of the tension was what this garden is going to celebrate. Is it going to celebrate the dead people or the fact of surviving and the kind of resilience that people want to put forward? That's why they ended up with a project of a memorial garden, because the fact that it is a garden is also a way of celebrating living again. And the second issue was the location. So in some ways, a lot of people wanted it to be in the 11th arrondissement, but others wanted it to be in a cemetery for this idea of mourning. So symbolically, it was decided that it was going to be behind the City Hall. Like that, it really epitomized the very spirit of the city. It was the two main discussions, but after all, it was a very collaborative process with not that many conflicts.
Now, you've written a lot about collective memory, and whilst the events of the 13th of November are indelibly, tragically etched on some people's minds, for others, the memory is fading. To what extent does that really matter? Why does it matter? Can you help us understand?
Yeah, of course. So even if we think of the event as being historical, it's not that historical for everyone at the same level. And the first thing is that when you study memory, you realize that there's social differences. Even if it's an event that almost anyone knows about, it's more important for some people and less for other people. And here you have kind of social inequalities also, like people who have a high level of education, who are based in Paris, who have, like our professionals, are more have a more tendency to remember the events and pay attention to this memory as others, like who live in, for example, in the countryside and who are less high level of education. So this is not an issue in itself, but at some point it can also associate this memory to a smaller part of society, which is why the public policy are meant to really make it meaningful for everyone. And the second difference is the fact that some people give different political meaning to the event. Of course, today it's a very consensual ceremony. Everyone speaks first about the victim and the fact that we need to remember them. But when you move away from the ceremony itself, you realize that there's kind of a political divide in the meaning you give to the event. Why the terrorist attack took place? What kind of lessons we need to draw from the event? This is not as consensual as the fact of paying tribute to the victim.
On that subject, I know that I've heard sometimes you've written about how the media can also help shape the narrative of these events. And I've heard survivors say that they can be very upset when there is this reluctance to use the word Islamist, which of course is not the same as Muslim. When there is a reluctance to use the word terrorist, they feel there is a kind of denial. Other survivors do not necessarily feel the same way. But how do you think the media have contributed to shaping the narrative around November the 19th? And how has it changed maybe over the last 10 years?
Yeah, the media are creating a framework for the interpretation of the event, even for the victims themselves. So the studies show that when, for example, the public debate and media are speaking more and more about immigration and the so-called migrant crisis, at this time, when you ask people to make sense of November 13, they have a tendency to make sense of it through the lens of this immigration concern. So it's not only about quoting Islamist or not, it's a broader framework where, depending on what the media focus on, the meaning given to the event can really change, which in some way can be dangerous, but also can be something which is positive, because today, for example, if you look at the media, including yourself, a lot of commentators really stress this solidarity, collective memory process. So it can also, in this way, enable a more consensual discussion.
There's going to be a museum soon in Paris, which is going to be dedicated to the victims and survivors of terrorist attacks, that encompasses a lot of different attacks. And this in itself, it's not just about November the 13th, is a delicate subject. There's sometimes a sensitivity over different events, a concern that there might be some sort of hierarchy of victims. What are your thoughts on that in this museum?
Yeah, it was actually the main concern about the museum. Because, as you know, France has a very long history, and terrorism is nothing but new. And so was the museum going to for example, include the events linked to the Algerian War, where a lot of terrorist attacks took place? So this kind of discussion were really difficult, and the decision that the museum took was the fact to start what they call the contemporary history of terrorism in France in 1974, which is the year of terrorist attack in a neighborhood that your audience may know, in Saint-Gervais Square. And so this is considered as the beginning. starting point of this new time of terrorism. So this was the first difficult decision to be taken. The other thing is, of course, the diversity of terrorist attack, even in the very, very contemporary time, like people from Nice, a terrorist attack which took place in the 14th of July 2016, they consider that the museum will be in Paris and will maybe, they are afraid that it will give too much attention to things which happen in Paris. So here again, you have this discrepancy between Paris and the rest of France, which is also one of the tension. And the other issue is, okay, a museum, but to tell what story and to use which kind of artifacts, because as you know, a museum needs collections to tell the story. So it was a very long process of trying to identify what kind of objects, testimonies, and photographs the museum was going to be able to use to tell the story it was going to tell. Right now, and so the museum had been in danger in some ways, this project. So now it will happen, and it will open in Paris in the 13th arrondissement, but we don't know exactly the year yet.
We don't have a lot of time. Just very quickly, one last question. Paris is considered by very many people, it is a world city, is a city appreciated by people all over the world, the city of love. And when these attacks happened on November the 13th, there was a worldwide outpouring of sympathy. I remember the big Hollywood evening with Céline Dion singing Il Malamour. It was really extraordinary, the sharing of the pain around the world. Were you surprised by that?
Not really, because I know what kind of echo Paris has. And also, it's not only about Paris, it was also a kind of life, going to the concert, enjoying dinner at terrace, a kind of life that the people who are all over the world, so this kind of cosmopolite group of people who travel, are used to. So it was not that much of a surprise that it echoed. And actually, when you went to Place de la République or all these grassroots memorials at the location where the event took place, even in Paris, you saw this international reactions to the event, because a lot of messages, drawings, etc., came from people who were living in Paris but were from abroad. Immigrants, tourists in all languages, a lot of flags from all over the world. It was really, even in Paris, an international event.
I'm afraid that's all we have time for. Thank you so much for sharing your insights and your ideas with us. Sarah Gensburger from the CNRS, the research body here in Paris. She's also written very extensively about the attacks. I think we showed the books there at the beginning of the interview.